The bar had 6 staff. I had spent 22 years managing teams of up to 200 people across 14 countries for a consumer goods company that operates in 40 markets. The bar had 6 staff and a laminated menu, and a Thai woman named Khun Rattana, who had worked in tourism hospitality on Koh Phangan for 11 years, and who ran the bar operations with an efficiency I did not initially appreciate and that I subsequently dismantled in the first 3 months by introducing the management systems that had worked in my corporate life and that had absolutely no utility in a beachfront bar on an island that exists, in the Thai hospitality context, entirely outside the processes that my corporate career had taught me to depend on. I am recording this approximately 6 months after the closing of the bar. I mention the timing because the 6 months have produced enough distance for me to describe the situation with some accuracy, and not enough distance to have softened the clarity that the accuracy requires. The £43,000 is a number I can state without flinching. The Khun Rattana resignation is a decision I can describe without self-justification. The 26 months produced, eventually, the clarity that they cost, and the clarity is what this recording is. The clarity says, I entered a context I did not understand, with skills that were not suited to it, with a confidence in those skills that was not warranted in this specific application. I lost money at the rate that not understanding requires. I stopped losing money when I closed. I stayed on the island because the island is what I wanted, and the bar was how I thought I had to buy my way into it, and the island did not require the bar, and did not require the £43,000, and I could have rented an apartment in Thong Sala in 2021 and been on the island for the same 4 years at a cost of approximately 300,000 baht, and the £43,000 could have remained where it started. But I did not know that the island was what I wanted until I was here, and the bar was what brought me here, and here is where I am, and the coffee is the same every morning. I am going to tell you what I did, and what the doing produced, and what the 26 months cost, and I am going to try to be exact about each of those things, because the exactness is the only thing that makes the loss worth reporting. My name is Richard. I am 63 years old. I am from Manchester, and I spent 22 years as a VP operations for a consumer goods conglomerate before taking early retirement in 2019 at 59. The 22 years produced a specific set of skills and a specific set of assumptions about those skills that I want to describe before I describe the bar, because the skills and the assumptions are the central characters in this story, and the bar is the environment in which they failed. Let me give you the 22 years in a way that makes the assumptions visible, because the assumptions are what produced the bar, and the bar is what produced the loss, and the loss is what produced the lesson, and the lesson is what this recording is for. I joined the company in 1997 as an operations manager for the UK business, and I rose through a series of roles across the UK, Germany, Indonesia, and 3 years in Singapore that I found the most intellectually stimulating of the career, before being appointed VP Operations for the Asia-Pacific Division in 2012. The VP role required me to manage teams of between 140 and 230 people, depending on the regional portfolio at the time, spread across 7 country offices, with 4 direct reports, each of whom managed their own sub-teams. The management model I developed across those years was the model I believe works. Clear role definitions, documented processes, regular cadence reviews, performance metrics visible to all levels, and a specific investment in the development of the direct reports who would eventually manage the functions I was managing. This model produced good outcomes across those teams in those countries across those years. It is not the model for a beach bar. My name is Richard. I am 63 years old. I am from Manchester, and I spent 22 years as a VP operations for a consumer goods conglomerate. The generality was real. The transferability was not, in the specific context of a Thai beach bar on Koh Phangan, with 6 staff and a menu of 32 items, and a clientele that consisted of backpackers, full moon party tourists, and a small number of long-stay international residents who had their own opinions about what the bar should be, and who were not shy about sharing them. I should give you why I bought the bar, because the why is instructive, and the instruction should come before the failure. I want to add something before the why, which is the retirement period between 2019 and 2021, and what it produced in me that made the bar feel like the answer. I retired in December 2019, at 59, with sufficient pension and savings to sustain any reasonable lifestyle anywhere in the world, and I returned to the house in Manchester that I had owned since 1996, and that had been occupied intermittently across the career's posting years, and that I now occupied fully, and found, across the following months, to be comfortable and quiet and insufficient. The insufficiency was not the house's fault. It was the absence of the thing the house had always coexisted with, which was the work. I had loved the work. Not in the way of a man who cannot stop working, but in the way of a man who finds a specific activity meaningful, and who discovers, when the activity ends, that the meaning does not transfer to the other activities that fill the time. Running was not meaningful in the same way. Reading was not meaningful in the same way. The men I knew who had retired successfully had found something to replace the meaning, usually something that involved managing or building or contributing in a way that their professional background made possible. The bar looked like something that involved managing. I was wrong about what kind of managing the bar would involve, and the wrongness cost £43,000, and the £43,000 is the most expensive education in the difference between management types that I have ever received, which is saying something given the company's investment in my executive development across 22 years. I should give you why I bought the bar, because the why is instructive. I retired in 2019 and spent 18 months in Manchester doing the things that a recently retired VP operations does, looking at property investment opportunities, running, reading, attending the gym at times previously occupied by meetings, and arriving gradually at the conclusion that the retirement I had planned did not feel like a retirement so much as an extended period of professional withdrawal. I needed something to run. This is the correct diagnosis of what I needed, and the diagnosis led me to a logical conclusion that was wrong, which was that what I needed to run was a business. I want to say one more thing about the need to run something, because the need is real, and the addressing of it was correct in its direction and wrong in its method, and the distinction between those two things is what the £43,000 taught me. I needed something to run. The thing I needed to run did not have to be a business. It could have been a community project, or a mentoring arrangement with a startup, or the kind of advisory role that corporate veterans with operational backgrounds can provide to growing businesses without assuming the operational risk. Any of those things would have given me the specific pleasure of the operational oversight without the specific exposure of the business ownership. I did not consider them because I had, in my corporate career, always been on the inside of the operation and had never considered operating from the outside as equivalent in its satisfactions. I now believe the outside is equivalent and considerably cheaper. If you need something to run, you do not necessarily need to own it. This is the lesson that £43,000 produced, and I could have had it for the cost of a good advisory engagement, and I did not know that, and now I know it, and the knowledge is available without the price. I needed something to run. This is the correct diagnosis of what I needed. I came to Koh Phangan for the first time in October 2020, on a trip to Thailand that had been planned for 2019, and that the year produced by 2020's global conditions had delayed until October of that year, when Thailand was briefly accessible. I had been to Thailand once before, in 2003, for a company conference in Bangkok, and the conference had not produced a particularly useful picture of the country as a potential home. I want to give you the October 2020 visit more fully, because the visit is where the decision was made, and the decision deserves its full account. I arrived in Koh Phangan, via Bangkok and Surat Thani and the ferry, with no prior knowledge of the island, and with a vague intention to see whether the islands of the Gulf of Thailand were the kind of environment I could inhabit for an extended period. The ferry from Surat Thani was mostly empty. The island, at October 2020 low season, was quieter than its reputation suggested. I rented a motorbike on the second day and rode the circumference road, which takes approximately 3 hours and produces a complete picture of the island's geography. The north coast with its bay views, The east coast with its quieter beaches, the south coast with the Hod Rin area, and the west coast with the town of Thong Sala, where the ferry arrives and where the island's commercial life is concentrated. The Hod Rin area, which is the island's tourist epicenter and the site of the full moon party, was operating at perhaps 20% of its normal capacity. I saw 4 beach bars in the Hod Rin area that were either closed or operating at minimal service. I spoke with the owner of one that was open, a British man from Bristol who had been there for 7 years and who gave me approximately 40 minutes of frank conversation about the island's business environment, including the observation that the pandemic had killed several businesses and that the properties coming available were underpriced relative to normal trading conditions. He said, "It's a buyer's market if you have the cash and the stomach." I had the cash. I had not assessed the stomach. I came to Koh Phangan for the first time in October 2020 on a trip to Thailand. Koh Phangan in October 2020 was a different experience from Bangkok in 2003. The island is smaller than Koh Samui, quieter in the specific way of a place whose tourism economy had been significantly reduced by the preceding 8 months, and I found it immediately engaging in a way that Bangkok had not been. I stayed for 3 weeks. I rented a motorbike. I identified Hod Rin as the center of the beach bar economy, and I identified 3 other beaches as having significant potential. I spoke with 4 people who had invested in small businesses on the island. I took notes. The notes were the notes of a man who had identified an opportunity and who was beginning the feasibility process that precedes an investment decision. The feasibility process was thorough, by the standards of a man who had done feasibility analyses on consumer goods market entries across Southeast Asia. I engaged a Thai business consultant in Koh Samui who had experience with foreign-owned hospitality businesses on Koh Phangan. I reviewed 3 years of the bar's financial records. I had the lease reviewed by a Thai lawyer. I modeled 3 revenue scenarios: pessimistic, base, optimistic, against cost assumptions that I derived from the financial records and from market rate research. I want to give you what the Bristol man told me and what I did with what he told me, because the telling and the doing are instructive. The Bristol man, his name was Philip. He had been running a guest house on the island for 7 years, said, among other useful things, "The biggest mistake that people from corporate backgrounds make in Thai hospitality is that they manage the vision and expect the staff to manage the reality." He said, "What you actually need to do is understand the reality that your staff are managing and support it, rather than replace it." I said I understood this. He said, "You think you do, but you probably don't." I said I had run teams of 200 people and had developed a good understanding of the difference between vision and execution. He said, "With respect, that's a different scale and a different kind of operation." He was right. I noted what he said. I did not change what I planned to do based on what he said, because I assessed his warning as the warning of a man who had arrived without a corporate management background and who was therefore overstating the incompatibility of that background with the Thai hospitality context. I was wrong. The assessment was wrong. Philip was right. I should have spent 3 to 6 months learning what Khun Rattana actually did before implementing any system, and I should have implemented only systems that she assessed as useful, and I should have asked Philip what the 7 years had taught him and listened to the answer with the specific attention that a man who is about to spend £43,000 should bring to advice from a man who has been in the environment for 7 years. The feasibility process was thorough by the standards of a man who had done feasibility analyses on consumer goods market entries across Southeast Asia. The modeling produced a base case return on investment of approximately 18 months at the bar's historic revenue run rate. I offered 2 million baht for the business and the lease assignment. The owner, who was leaving the island to return to Bangkok, accepted 2,200,000. I paid the additional 200,000 because the lease had 4 years remaining, and the location, second row from the beach on a road that connected the Hod Rin area to the main beach, was one of the 3 locations I had identified in my October research as having significant potential. I added a further 600,000 in initial investment, staff training, menu development, a new sound system, repainting, a website, social media setup, and 2 months of operating reserve. Total commitment, 2,800,000 baht. At the exchange rates of early 2021, approximately £63,000. The first mistake, Khun Rattana. She had been running the bar's daily operations for 3 of the 4 years under the previous owner, who had spent approximately 4 months per year on the island and approximately 8 months in Bangkok. The previous owner's management model was, trust Khun Rattana to run the operations and review the accounts monthly. The model had produced the bar's historic financial performance, which was the financial performance on which I had based my modeling. I want to give you Khun Rattana more precisely, because she is the most important person in this story, and she deserves a proper account. She is 44, from Surat Thani originally, and she came to Koh Phangan in 2010 during the island's previous peak of tourism development, and has been in the hospitality sector there since. She knows the island's tourist economy in the specific way of a person who has been working in it for 11 years. She knows which months are genuinely high season and which ones are lower than the tourist publications suggest. She knows the specific preferences of the different tourist demographics, the backpackers, the full moon party visitors, the yoga retreat guests, the long-stay expats. She knows which suppliers are reliable and which ones deliver late in the high season and need to be over-ordered, and she knows which staff members in the island's hospitality sector are competent and available, and which ones are not worth the trouble. This is the knowledge that runs a beach bar. It is not a knowledge that can be replaced by a cash reconciliation system or a shift scheduling spreadsheet. I replaced it anyway, inadvertently, by implementing processes that made her the executor of my systems, rather than the manager of her own operations. And she resigned, because she had not taken a job as a process executor and did not want to become one, and she was right, and her resignation was the single most consequential event of the 26 months, and the event I most regret. The first mistake, Khun Rattana. She had been running the bar's daily operations for 3 of the 4 years under the previous owner. The previous owner's management model was, trust Khun Rattana and review the accounts monthly. I arrived with the intention of being present full-time and implementing management practices that would improve on the previous model. The first week I introduced a daily cash reconciliation system. The second week I introduced a staff scheduling system with shift planning and handover documentation. The third week I introduced an inventory management system for the bar stock. Khun Rattana implemented each system with the specific patience of a person who has been asked to do something she considers unnecessary and who is choosing to comply rather than argue. By the end of month 3 she had resigned. She cited personal reasons, which I accepted and which I subsequently understood, from conversations with other staff and with a neighboring bar owner, to have been professional reasons. She was a competent operations manager who had been replaced in all her operational functions by a set of systems that a corporate VP had designed without asking her what the bar actually required. I had dismantled the management model that had produced the bar's historic performance and replaced it with a model that had no equivalent track record in the specific context. The second mistake, the menu. I had a food and beverage consultant review the existing menu of 32 items and advise on how it could be improved. I want to give you what the existing menu actually was, and why it existed as it did, because the existing menu was the product of the same accumulated knowledge that produced Khun Rattana's operational model. The 32 items had been developed across 4 years of trading in a specific customer segment: backpackers and budget tourists who wanted simple Thai food, a few Western options, and affordable drinking. The prices were calibrated to the budget tourists' price sensitivity, which on Koh Phangan is significantly lower than the premium tourist price sensitivity that the craft beer selection I introduced assumed. The existing menu produced approximately 60% gross margin on food and approximately 40% on beverages, which are the margins appropriate for the customer segment the bar served. The expanded menu I introduced produced approximately 48% gross margin on food. The additional complexity increased food cost, and approximately 32% on the craft beer. The import premium and the storage cost reduced the beverage margin significantly. I did not calculate these margins before implementing the expansion. I calculated them 4 months after, when the monthly management accounts made them visible. The consultant's advice had been technically correct for a bar targeting a premium tourist demographic. The bar's location and historical customer base were targeting a budget tourist demographic. The mismatch was not the consultant's error. It was my error in not specifying the target demographic clearly before commissioning the advice. The second mistake, the menu. I had a food and beverage consultant review the existing menu and advise on how it could be improved. The consultant advised expanding the menu to 54 items, adding a craft beer selection, and introducing a weekly live music night. I implemented all 3 recommendations. The craft beer increased the bar's beverage costs significantly because the supply chain for imported craft beer on Koh Phangan is expensive and inconsistent. The extended menu increased the kitchen complexity beyond what my remaining staff could manage during peak service, which produced a service quality decline that the TripAdvisor reviews began to reflect within 6 weeks of the expansion. The live music night was canceled after 3 events, because the amplified sound attracted complaints from the neighboring guest house that resulted in a complaint to the local authority and a visit from a Koh Phangan municipal official who explained that our operating license did not cover amplified live music. The consultant's advice had been accurate for a beach bar in a fully operational tourist economy. It had been inappropriate for a beach bar in the specific operating environment of Koh Phangan in 2021, which was operating at approximately 40% of pre-pandemic tourist volume and which had a specific customer mix that the expanded menu did not serve. The third mistake, the financial model. My model had assumed a revenue run rate based on the previous 3 years of the bar's financials. The previous 3 years had included 2018 and 2019, which were years of full tourist volume on Koh Phangan. 2020's actuals, which should have functioned as the pessimistic scenario anchor, had instead been smoothed into the 3-year average in a way that understated the severity of the low-volume scenario. The 2021 revenue, which was the first year of my ownership, came in at approximately 58% of the base case projection, which produced a monthly cash deficit that I funded from the operating reserve, which I had budgeted for 2 months and which lasted 5 months. After month 5, I was funding the bar's operating deficit from my personal savings, at a rate of approximately 45,000 baht per month. This rate was sustainable, given my financial position, for approximately 14 months from the point at which the reserve was exhausted. I closed the bar in April 2023, 26 months after opening. The closing. I want to describe the closing because the closing is where the final accounting is done, and the final accounting is the number I want to give you. Let me give you the closing process, because the process is informative. By January 2023, it was clear that the bar's monthly deficit was not going to reverse in the near term, because the 2022-2023 tourist season on Koh Phangan, while better than 2021, had not returned to the pre-pandemic volume that my modeling had assumed, and the demographic mix of the returning tourists, more budget-conscious, less inclined toward the premium craft beer selection I had invested in, was not the demographic my expanded menu and pricing had been designed for. I had a meeting in January 2023 with a financial advisor in Koh Samui who reviewed the trading position and the projection, and who said, with the specific clarity that a financial advisor uses when the numbers do not leave much room for interpretation, you should close within 3 months. I had been resisting this conclusion for approximately 6 months. The meeting made the resistance no longer useful. I began the closing process in February 2023. I contacted the investor next door, the Thai man who had been watching the bar's performance, and informed him that I was planning to close and was open to offers on the lease. He came back within a week with 600,000 baht, which was below what I had hoped for and above what I had feared. I accepted. I then began the equipment liquidation, which I managed over 2 months through a combination of direct sales to other hospitality businesses on the island and a clearance sale. The total equipment recovery was 340,000 baht. The closing costs, lease exit admin, final staff settlements, utility disconnections, legal fees, came to approximately 80,000 baht. Net closure, 940,000 minus 80,000 equals 860,000 baht recovered. Against 2,800,000 invested, a net loss of 1,940,000 baht, approximately 43,000 pounds. This is the number. I have stated it precisely because the precision is the honest thing. The closing. I want to describe the closing because the closing is where the final accounting is done, and the final accounting is the number I want to give you. I sold the remaining lease, 2.5 years, to a Thai investor who had been watching the bar's performance from the business next door and who offered 600,000 baht, which I accepted because the alternative was walking away from the lease without any recovery. Equipment and fit-out sold piecemeal over 2 months, approximately 340,000 baht. Total recovery from the closing, 940,000 baht. Against the 2,800,000 invested, a net loss of 1,860,000 baht. At the exchange rates of April 2023, approximately 43,000 pounds, in 26 months. This is the number, and I am not going to minimize it. I want to tell you what the 22 years of corporate management did not give me that the bar required, because the taxonomy is the lesson, and the lesson should be precise. I want to add one more dimension to the taxonomy, which is the dimension of context. The skills that made me good at consumer goods operations were skills I had developed over 22 years in a specific context. Large organizations with institutional memory, specialist HR and finance and legal functions, management frameworks that were shared across the organization and that had been tested and refined over years, and a customer base that was reached through marketing and distribution rather than through the direct daily relationship of a service business with its customers. The beach bar has none of these context features. It has no institutional memory because the staff changes frequently and the owner changes. It has no specialist support functions. The owner is the HR function, the finance function, the marketing function, and the customer service function simultaneously in a 6-staff operation. The management framework is the owner's personal operating model, which in Khun Rattana's case was a relationship-based model developed over 11 years on the island, and in my case was a process-based model developed over 22 years in multinational corporate environments. The relationship-based model was appropriate for the context. The process-based model was not. I spent 26 months learning this. The learning cost 43,000 pounds. I want to tell you what the 22 years of corporate management did not give me, that the bar required, because the taxonomy is the lesson, and the lesson should be precise. What the corporate career gave me, the ability to manage large numbers of people with clear role definitions through well-documented processes in organizations with institutional memory and support functions. What the beach bar required, the ability to manage 6 people who had informal role definitions, who operated through relationships and tacit knowledge rather than documented processes, who had no institutional memory because the institution had no continuity of staff, and whose performance was directly affected by a customer mix that changed weekly in ways that a process system cannot anticipate. These are different management challenges. They may look similar from the outside because both involve people, processes, and a profit and loss statement. I want to be specific about what the beach bar required that I did not have, because specificity is the thing that makes a lesson transferable. The beach bar required the ability to hire and retain Thai staff in a context where the competition for reliable hospitality workers on a Thai island is intense, and where the relationships that produce staff loyalty are personal rather than contractual. I had no personal relationships in Koh Phangan in February 2021. Khun Rattana had 11 years of them. Her departure took those relationships with her. I could not rebuild them at scale. The staff I hired after Khun Rattana's departure were good people who did not have her network or her operational knowledge, and the bar's operational quality declined accordingly. The beach bar also required the ability to read the island's tourist market week by week and adjust pricing, menu, and staffing accordingly. The full moon party weeks require different staffing and pricing than the quieter inter-party weeks. The high season months require different purchasing decisions than the shoulder months. These adjustments are not derivable from a spreadsheet built on historic averages. They are derivable from years of observation of the specific market, which Khun Rattana had, and I did not. My financial model had averaged out these variations. The averaging concealed the specific periods of extreme stress that the real business experienced. The hidden stress periods were the periods that killed the cash flow. These are different management challenges. They may look similar from the outside because both involve people, processes, and a profit and loss statement. From the inside, they are as similar as managing a pharmaceutical supply chain is to running a Thai street food cart. The skills that made me good at one are not the skills that would have made me competent at the other. I needed to learn the skills that the beach bar required, which were how to manage a small Thai team by relationship rather than by system, how to price a menu in a tourist economy with volatile demand, how to read a lease in a Thai hospitality context, and how to identify when a manager who has been doing the job for 3 years is doing it correctly and should be left to do it. I did not learn these skills before opening the bar because I did not know I needed them. The bar taught me. The teaching cost £43,000 in 26 months. I am on Koh Phangan, not at the bar. The bar is now a Thai massage business operated by the investor who bought the lease. I am at the cafe that I go to most mornings, on the road between my apartment and Hod Rin. I want to give you the Koh Phangan daily life that the bar's closure has left me with, because the daily life is part of the honest account. I stayed on the island after the closure, which was a decision I made before the closure was complete. I am 63, I like the island, and the £43,000 loss, while significant, did not alter my retirement viability in a way that required me to return to Manchester. I rent an apartment in the area between Thong Sala and Hod Rin, on the west side of the island that faces the mainland, and the daily life is the daily life of a man who is on a Thai island without a business to run, and who has discovered, somewhat to his surprise, that this is a satisfactory condition. The mornings are the mornings. The cafe is the cafe. The island has a specific character in the months outside the full moon season. Quieter, more residential, more like an island that people live on rather than visit. And I have been here long enough to know both versions and to prefer the quieter one. I walk in the evenings. I read in the afternoons. I have a small group of expats I see regularly, including a former architect from Sydney and a retired Norwegian teacher who has been on the island for 14 years and whose knowledge of the island's operational rhythms I would have found useful in 2021, and that I now find useful for different and more pleasant purposes. The island itself is what I have. The bar was what I bought to give me a reason to be on the island, and the island was what I actually wanted, and the island is still here, and the bar is a massage business, and I am at the cafe most mornings, and the coffee is the same every morning, and I know the road between the apartment and the cafe well enough to know it in the dark. The walk takes 8 minutes. The 8 minutes is sufficient. The £63,000 was the entry fee, and the entry fee was too high, and I paid it. And I am here, and here is good. The Norwegian teacher, his name is Gunnar, is the person on the island who most closely resembles what I might have become if I had not bought the bar. He arrived in 2010, at 53, having retired from a secondary school teaching position in Oslo, and he has been here ever since. 14 years, the same apartment in Thong Sala, the same routine of morning walks and evening meals at 3 or 4 restaurants where he is known, and the slow accumulation of the island knowledge that a long-stay resident develops and that a new arrival cannot shortcut. He does not have a business. He has never had a business on the island. He told me, when I described the bar situation in more detail than I had initially offered, we had built up enough trust for me to give him the actual numbers, that he had considered starting a business in 2012 and had decided against it after speaking with 2 people who had started businesses on the island, and who had described the starting as the easiest part, and the continuing as the part that requires more than most arriving people bring. He had listened. He had continued not having a business. He has 14 years on the island, and the specific piece of a man who did not spend £43,000 learning what the island's business environment is like. I do not resent him for this. I find him useful. He told me, in a conversation approximately 6 months after the closing, something that I have thought about since, which was, the island rewards the people who came to be here, rather than the people who came to do something here. I said I had come to do something here. He said yes. I said, and now? He said, now you are here. He was correct. The distinction between being here and doing something here is the distinction between the 4 years of the bar and the 0 subsequent years of the bar, and the 0 subsequent years are better than the 4 years, and the 4 years are what produced them, and the produced them is sufficient justification for the cost, and I am Gunnar's neighbor now, in the specific sense of 2 men who are on the same island, without a business, and who have a coffee together occasionally, and who both know what the island is like when you are simply in it. He has 14 years on the island, and the specific piece of a man who did not spend £43,000 learning what the island's business environment is like. I have a small group of expats I see regularly, including Gunnar. I am on Koh Phangan. The bar is now a Thai massage business. I am at the cafe most mornings, on the road between my apartment and Had Rin. The cafe is run by a Thai man who has been running it for 9 years and whose operation is precise and excellent, and who, if you ask him how he manages it, will tell you that he has the same 3 staff he has had for 6 years, and that he knows what they need, and they know what he needs, and the coffee is the same every morning. He does not have a staff scheduling system. He does not have a cash reconciliation protocol. He has 9 years of relationship with 3 people and a product that is correct. I drink his coffee every morning, and I think about what the bar cost me and what the coffee costs him, and about the specific kind of knowledge that 9 years in one place with the same 3 people produces. I want to give you the cafe owner's name, which is Khun Somchai, and I want to tell you about one conversation I had with him approximately 4 months after I closed the bar, because the conversation produced the clearest expression of the lesson I have received. I was at the cafe on a Tuesday morning, and I was describing to him, in the limited Thai I have developed across 4 years on the island, and the limited English he has, the situation of the bar, that I had bought it, that I had changed things, that the changing of things had produced some problems, that the bar had closed. He listened. He said, and I am translating from memory and from a limited shared vocabulary, so the precision is approximate. Something like, if it was working, why change? I said, I thought I could make it better. He said, better how? I said, more efficient. He thought about this. He said, if the coffee is right, you don't change the coffee. I went home, and I thought about this for the rest of the day. It is the most useful management advice I received during the 26 months, and it came from a man with no management qualifications and 9 years of one cafe and the same 3 staff and the correct coffee. I drink his coffee every morning, and I think about what the bar cost me and what the coffee costs him, and about the specific kind of knowledge that 9 years in one place with the same 3 people produces, which is a knowledge I could not have arrived at through any of the processes I spent 22 years perfecting. I could not have managed the beach bar well in April 2021. I might have managed it acceptably by April 2023, if I had not already closed it. Let me give you the specific advice I would give to any corporate professional considering a small Thai hospitality business, because the advice should be the product of the experience, and the experience cost £43,000. The advice has 4 components. 1. If the business you are acquiring has a competent manager already running it, your first task is to understand what that manager does, and how and why, not to improve it, not to document it. Understand it. Spend the first 3 months learning before you change anything. If the business was profitable under their management, the management was working. Find out why before you replace it. 2. The financial model you build from historic data will be more optimistic than the reality you encounter, because historic data is the data of an established business, and you are the owner of an establishing business. Budget explicitly for 12 months at 50 to 70% of historic revenue while you are learning and adjusting. 3. Do not implement your management systems in month 1. Implement them in month 7, after you understand the business as it actually operates. The systems you implement in month 7 will be appropriate. The systems you implement in month 1 will be appropriate for the business you imagined. 4. Find the Philip equivalent and listen to him with the attention that his years in the environment deserve. He has paid for the information he is sharing with his own mistakes. The sharing is generous. The listening is the minimum courtesy. I could not have managed the beach bar well in April 2021. I might have managed it acceptably by April 2023, if I had not already closed it. This is the summary of the 26 months. I arrived without the knowledge the context required. I spent 26 months learning at the rate the learning costs, and I closed before the learning was complete. The learning is now complete, in the specific sense that the knowledge I could not have arrived at without having done the thing is now available to me, and the thing cost £43,000, and the knowledge is filed, and the morning coffee is the same every morning, and the island is what it was before the bar, and what it has been since, and what it will be when I am here without either the bar or the lesson, and simply here, which is all it needed to be from the start. The 6 staff and the 200 teams, and the laminated menu, and the £43,000 are all in the same account now, which is the account of a man who learned something expensive, and who is on Koh Phangan in the mornings, and who drinks the same coffee every morning, and who considers the rate he paid for the education unreasonable, and the education itself correct. And this is the filed report, and the filing is complete.